Ladies and gentlemen, we present you the Belgrade Security Conference Master of Ceremony, Miss Amanda Coakley.
Hello. Hi, good morning everybody. My name is Amanda Coakley and I'm your Master of Ceremony for this year's conference. I'm delighted to welcome you to Belgrade. So who am I? I am a writer mainly for Foreign Policy magazine, and I cover Central and Eastern Europe, and I'm also an IWM Europe's Futures Fellow in Vienna. So, as I said, I'm delighted to welcome you. The title of our conference is Authoritarianism as a Cause of War and a Duty to Resist. Now, of course, that's an incredibly huge topic, but I think that today nuanced conversations really matter, and honest conversations matter. And I think the depth of this conference really shows all the different things that we have to address. And over the next 2 days, we're going to be talking about Russia's war in Ukraine, the future of the EU, democracy and authoritarianism, the green energy transition, human rights, cyber security. So I really hope that you take something away that really adds to your work going forward, and that you can meet people and have conversations outside of the panels as well that will benefit you. So, on with the conference. So this year's conference is dedicated to Voyan Dmitrievich, and he was a long-time human rights campaigner here in Belgrade. And he passed away 10 years ago, and we'd like to remember him and his work. So now there'll be a brief video, and I hope you enjoy it, and please keep him in your thoughts throughout the next 2 days. Thank you very much.
Svi vidovi diskriminacije imaju jedan zajednički imenitelj. Svi se oni svode na to da se prema nekome ophodimo ovako ili onako, ne zbog onoga što on ili ona jeste, zbog njegovih ili njenih zasluga ili prestupa, već zbog njegove ili njene pripadnosti određene grupi, za koju se vezuju određeni stereotipi. Ako se prema pojedincu odnosimo kao prema individualnoj ličnosti, i to ne samo u individualnim odnosima, već na jednoj opštoj, višoj ravni, i ako mediji, predstavnici svih nivoa vlasti, javne ličnosti i mnogi drugi počnu da se ponašaju tako, načinili smo prvi korak na putu tolerancije i tolerisanja.
Kod nas nema pravne države. Nije ni čudo da posle tolikih godina preziranja prava da postoji nakazna predstava o pravnoj državi. Ono što se kod nas vrlo režeći uvek kaže, sad će da deluje pravna država, to je zapravo jedna država koja pendrekom i drugim sredstvima sprovodi samovolju onoga koji ima prava da komanduje takvim snagama.
Vi imate recimo medije koji su jedna od velikih sila nekontrolisanih u našem društvu, gde se ljudsko dostojanstvo gazi kako se hoće, bez ikakvih posledica.
Mi se vraćamo u tu hipernacionalnu državu, a trudio sam se da gledam ustave, jer ustavi su jedina stvar koju ti režimi ne mogu da poreknu. Jer ako kažete nešto drugo, oni vam kažu nije tačno. Lažna propaganda, čitali ste pogrešnu štampu. Ustav je napisan, tu stoji.
Mi imamo jedan teži slučaj lustracije nego drugi. Verovatno će takav slučaj imati Uzbekistan, Tadžikistan i tako dalje. Jer treba lustrirati, ove sve ostale su bile protiv bivše takozvane bolševičke komunističke vlasti, jer da što je na neki način jednostavnije, a mi smo morali da istovremeno obavimo lustraciju i te vlasti i ove koju je navodno zamenila. I naravno, pošto bi to pogodilo ljude koji su bili vrlo važni i u jednoj i u drugoj vlasti i koji su kao što smo videli, od staljinista postali preko noći nacionalisti, onda je otpor toliko veći. To je počelo od Hitlera i od njegovog sistema, da su neke strašne stvari bile dozvoljene. I onda imate tu takozvanu tranzicijonu pravdu, kako ćete kazniti ljude koji su učinili nepodopštine, da vređali sam duh prava, zato što i navodno i vlada i vlasti dopuštili da to rade, a da ne povredite njihova prava. I lustracija se svodi ni na kakvu kaznu, nego na sprečavanje da u vrhovne organe vlasti jedno vreme ne dođu neki ljudi koji su pokazali svojim radom da nisu dostojni toga. Šta više, ako ih je narod birao, kao što su narodni poslanici, onda je jedina mera da se opomenu birači da znaju koga biraju.
Smatrao sam, kao i mnogi drugi, da čovek koji javno istupa mora u trenucima koje smatra opasnim i sudbonosnim činiti sve što može da spreči ili oteža najgore ishode, koristeći bar zdrav razum.
Ljudi jeste grosso modo rade za interes, ali dođu trenuci kada nastane jedna masovna iracionalnost indukovana nekako demagogijom, potrebom, znate, tim uverenjem o žrtvi, o tome da smo, ne znam, dobili u ratu, gubili u miru, šta sve to tako. I sada prosto obični ljudi mi smo čudna zemlja gde je, kako bih rekao, običan narod inteligentni od elite.
In 1989, he removed Kosovo's autonomy, turning the province's Albanian majority into second-class citizens.
Let's face it, he enjoyed a tremendous support, and of course people were not aware for a number of years initially that this was leading to bloodshed, that this was leading to crimes, that this country will be totally isolated.
Krajem ove nedelje znači u petak, a danas je ponedeljak.
Ljudi su gadljivi na politiku i pošto su gadljivi, samo im se sveti. Bavit će se politikom oni koji nisu gadljivi. Ne krivem toliko šarlatane ili neznalice, jer oni to zbilje i ne znaju. Verovatno onaj naš lingvista koji nam je stalno pisao da u Americi ne sme da se govori drugčije nego engleski, da se odmah apse ljudi koji govore drugčije, verovatno on to ne zna. Ali znam veliki broj ljudi koji znaju, ali govore drugčije. I mislim da su oni veliki krivci za ovo zlo su davali, kako se to nekad govorilo, naučnu podlogu za ovo sve.
Ovde izgleda ne postoji konsensus ili je stvoren desetogodišnjom propagandom da je ubiti čoveka zločin. Samo nekoga ubiti. Ubiti ne Srbina, a Boga mi i ubiti Srbina.
Kad su me optuživali da nemam nacionalni osjećaj, odgovarao sam i odgovaram da ga i tekako imam. Odgovaram to na jeziku koji najbolje znam, na srpskom, pa se često u tim prepucavanjima ispostavi da je moj srpski mnogo bolji od srpskog onih koji me za nesrpstvo optužuju.
Samim protekom vremena sve idu u zaborav. Kao što vidite iz tog istog istraživanja, zaboravljaju se i zločini nad Srbima. To je jedna prirodna potreba da ne mislimo o tome i to vam je taj eskapizam koji vlada na svim našim medijima, ajde da mislimo o nečem drugom. Prema tome nema šanse ako se nešto ne promeni. Jedino što može se promeni to je da naša intelektualna i politička elita počne drugčije da govori. Jer znaš šta, ljudi govore ovo što im je 1000 puta u 15 godina rečeno, pa rat je rat, pa u ratu svi ubijaju, pa mi smo najveća žrtva, pa mi smo se branili i tako dalje. Nije to stiglo spontano dosta. To je jedan plod jednog sistematskog indoktriniranja, ponavljanja, koji naravno leže na jednu potrebu ljudi da, šta ja znam, njegov rođak, njegov sunarodnik, njegova okolina, taj, verujemo da nije kriv, pa svi ćemo u porodici pretpostavimo da naše dete, naš brat nije to učinio.
Ono što se ovde desilo se
prevashodno našom zaslugom, i to pretežno zaslugom ovih iz Beograda, jedne koalicije staljinista, socijalista i srpskih nacionalista koji su možda mislili da će da izigraju jedne druge, ali obično izigra drugoga onaj koji ima medije, koji ima policiju, koji ima vojsku, a to je imao Milošević. Pošto se Međunarodnom sudu pravde može prići samo putem genocida, onda se svi sile da dokažu ono što se desilo da je genocid. I paradoks je da sad, kad to počinje da se radi, kad postoje ozbiljni sporazumi između tužilaštava i tako dalje, mi ostajemo na toj jednoj tužbi i protiv tužbi koje su zapravo uslovljene procesno, uslovljene potrebom da se nešto proglasi za genocid, da bi se dobio forum pred Međunarodnim sudom u Hagu, što više nije potrebno i što naravno izaziva neke reminiscencije iz prošlosti koje bi svi želeli da ne da zaboravimo, nego da prevaziđemo.
Humor i ironija su znak pameti i skromnosti onoga koji iznosi neku tvrdnju. On time pokazuje da je uveren da se služi najboljim argumentima, ali da njih odvaja od sebe, jer ne misli da je nepogrešiv i da nema neku, bar sitnu manu. Ako je takav, sagovornici ga primaju kao ljudsko biće, sa simpatijama ili razumevanjem koji odatle proističu. U suprotnom, njegova uobraženost se postepeno pretvara u ograničenost, a njegove patetične tvrdnje sve su neumesnije.
Policija uvek žmuri na desno oko. Njoj se uvek više smeta levica u svim zemljama u desnici. Gledajte šta je bilo sa našim jadnim šakom takozvanih anarhista. Oni su odkreketali u istražnom zatvoru koliko, 6-8 meseci, zbog jedne štete napada na grčku ambasadu, gde i sama grčka ambasada nije podržala gonjenje i rekla to košta, ne znam, 15 evra. Međutim, oni su držani to jer ta odijum prema toj levici kod nas postoji i to su drugi razlici. Tako da ovo sve što nabrajate, to je desno. Odlučujuće snage koje podržavaju vladu sadašnju Srbije ili mrze ili preziru nevladine organizacije iz raznih razloga i smatraju možda i štetnim. Neki zato što smatraju da osim države ne treba nikoga da bude, ne shvataju da je društvo komplikovanije, da je suviše komplikovano da bi samo država ga vodila, a neki jednostavno se prenosi ta mržnja iz radnijeg perioda, tako da kad god treba maltretirati nevladine organizacije, one se maltretiraju. Čak i ako to ne piše u zakonu, da imate uvek mrzovoljne službenika koji to rade. I pritom se pod nevladinim organizacijama tim lošim smatraju samo one koji se bave ljudskim pravom i demokratijom. Niko ne dira u one najnazadnije. Ima puno vrlo problematičnih, kako bih rekao, moralno nevladinih organizacija, ima direktno reakcionarni upotrebi termina. Niko njih ne dira. Zadivljuje me jedna naša rusofilija koja ima neke obrise, zato je kompetentniji Žarko Korać, ima neke obrise prave ljubavi. Jedna ljubav između muškarca i žene, gde vi onda kad vidite nešto loše na onom drugom ili vam neko kaže, vi to nekako racionalizujete da prevladate. Nju vole svi. Vole je i bivši komunisti, vole je inferbirovci, vole je i dražinovci, vole je i komunisti i antikomunisti, i monarhisti i republikanci, zato što svi oni u njoj vide nešto što je njima slično,
nešto
što
su
njima
možda izgubili
odgovara.
od svojih želja ovde.
A drugo, onda naravno, s druge strane, ruska diplomatija bi trebalo da bude luda da to ne iskoristi. Mi se ponašamo kao da sve treba da nam plati što smo glasali 24. što smo 5. odborili diktaturu, kao da smo mi tu demokratiju i vladavinu nekog reda učinili da bi učinili strancima. Država mora da štiti i one koji demonstriraju i one koji pokušavaju da kontrademonstriraju, zato što sloboda izražavanja i iznošenja svojih gledišta nije obojena ideološki.
Lako je biti fanatičan u odbrani ekstrema, ali se ne može biti fanatično tolerantan.
First of all, I'd just like to thank the people that put that beautiful video together. I know as a former TV news producer the amount of work that goes into a memorial video like that, so thank you very, very much. One thing that I really took away from that video was Voyan Dmitrievich's comment, talking about the dangers of this thinking that we lost in peace but won in war. And when you look at Vladimir Putin's Russia today and how basically the politics of memory has been used, especially the Second World War, and the dangers that that thinking has brought up, is really something. It's really something amazing that he was talking about this years and years ago, albeit in a different context. So anyway, moving on, I'd like to introduce Igor Bandovic, the director of the Belgrade Centre for Security Policy. Thank you.
Dear guests, in June, when we received the news that our long-time partners were withdrawing from the joint project of the Belgrade Security Forum, the BCSP team faced a big dilemma, whether to continue organizing the conference or give up on such an important but demanding organizational and logistical venture that we jointly planned for 11 years. Although initially planned as a major obstacle, BCSP team decided to continue. We decided to continue with the conference because Serbia, its foreign policy, its security policy, needs it. Because it is necessary for the Western Balkans region, and because it is necessary for Europe to have such conference in Belgrade. Serbia needs it because it presents an honest, eye-opening alternative to provincial and malicious interpretation of world events. The Balkan needs it because of the regional stability, its European future, and new way of looking at our old problems. Europe needs it because it will be one of the few forces where key pan-European debates can be conducted in this country. We cannot remain Balkan-centric. We can no longer afford to look at the world through the prism of our own problems, just as we shouldn't be cynical about human suffering anywhere, coldly calculating or not taking a humanitarian stand when it pays off. That's why with this year's conference, precisely, we are focusing on Ukraine, the causes and its consequences. All the doubts, challenges, and obstacles in the Balkans become obsolete in the face of the new danger. An aggressive war waged against the sovereign state only because it aspired to join the European Union and the NATO. Authoritarianism is the same in all parts of the world. Although it's sometimes very hard for external observers to see. Authoritarianism can never be good. In its final stage, authoritarianism will lead to war, suffering, and innocent victims. It's simply a matter of time. And when this becomes evident, it's too late. With these thoughts in mind, we have compiled a program for Belgrade Security Conference this year, focusing on authoritarianism as a cause of war. That is why we have invited human rights defenders from Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia to address us at this conference. It is our great pleasure in BCSP and all its partners and conference organizers to honor and to receive this year's Nobel laureates. We admire their struggle for democracy and for freedom. For the same reason, we dedicate this year's conference to our mentor and professor, Vojin Dmitrievich, who spent his whole life fighting against dictatorship, war crimes, autocracy, and for human rights. This October marks the 10th year of his passing away. This year also, we encourage our partner organizations with whom we share the same values to have their own panel discussions within the conference. And they will address the topics which are specific to their areas of work. Misinformation, fake news, the topic of human rights defenders, and the issue of EU enlargement in specific circumstances imposed by the war. Energy security and Europeans' new security architecture will also be discussed. We will close the conference with a key and the current topic of the region, the relationship between Kosovo and Serbia, and we will host Kosovo Deputy Prime Minister Besnik Bislimi. We believe that if the goal of the Serbia-Kosovo negotiations is to normalize relations, such a visit should be a common occurrence of improving relations between Pristina and Belgrade. We hope that both Serbian and Kosovo authorities will encourage and appreciate these kinds of mutual visits, especially when organized by civil society organizations. Finally, I would like to thank all our donors and partner organizations. They have recognized the work of the BCSP for many years and decided to join us for this special and unique opportunity. I wish you all 2 days of great discussions, new insights, and thoughtful talks. I hope this event will inspire greater determination to make the Balkans and Europe more democratic, more secure, and more safe. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, since the Russian aggression against Ukraine started on 24th of February, the Kremlin and local anti-Western narrative prevails in most of the daily press, as well as the Serbian media under control of the government. Because of this, and a decade-long daily drip of anti-Western propaganda from government-affiliated tabloids and TVs, the majority of the Serbian population has only been able to hear one side of the story. It is, to say the least, confused when it comes to what's happening in Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. The Kremlin's disinformation efforts have also been successful in poisoning the public opinion and the public discourse in other Western Balkans countries. The unofficial motto of the new Belgrade Security Conference is duty to listen to the other side. We at the Belgrade Centre for Security Policy oppose authoritarianism, value democracy, and believe in the sanctity of international law. For such reasons, we are honored to present this year's Nobel Prize laureates from Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia. For many years, all three organizations have promoted the right to criticize power, document war crimes, document human rights abuses, and protect the fundamental rights of citizens. Together, these laureates demonstrate the significance of civil society's struggle for peace and democracy. The Center for Civil Liberties was founded in Kyiv in 2007 for the purpose of advancing human rights and democracy in Ukraine. The center has taken a stand to strengthen Ukrainian civil society and pressure the authorities to make Ukraine a fully fledged democracy. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Center for Civil Liberties engaged in efforts to identify and document Russian war crimes against the Ukrainian civilian population. This is why we are honored to have with us Alexandra Matvichuk, representing the Ukrainian human rights organization Center for Civil Liberties. I would like to say on behalf of us, the organizers of this conference, and I assume most of the people attending it, Lesia, we stand with Ukraine.
We have documented over 21,000 episodes of war crimes. And sometimes I have a very clear understanding that we document the pure human pain. Russia uses the war crimes as the methods of warfare. Russian military intentionally ruins residential dwellings, churches, hospitals, schools, critical civil infrastructure. Russians facilitate filtration camp system and commit massive deportation of Ukrainian population. Russian army terrorizes civilians, aiming to keep its control over the occupied territories. They abduct, torture, rape, and kill people. So I would like to say several words about global security, which now lays in ruins as Ukrainian Mariupol. Global security is the most difficult challenge since the Second World War. We live in a world where the permanent member of the UN Security Council unleashes the war of aggression, and as a result, a Russian rocket kills a journalist in Kyiv accurately upon the visit of the UN Secretary General. The whole system of peace and security has failed for months, for years, to stop Russian atrocities. And it's important to understand why. Militaries are speaking now because civil society voices have not been heard before. Maybe we, as a human rights defenders, were heard at the UN Committee on Human Rights or at the HDAM OSCE, but not in the rooms where decisions are made by the people in power. If we do not want to live in a world where power is stay only with those who have the stronger military, civil society voices need much more support. First, the connection between peace, progress, and human rights is inextricable. That was evident for the Soviet dissidents in the Helsinki movement. Human rights and the rule of law are a matter of common security, just as important as the military potential or economic stability. Second, we can no longer afford to separate and marginalize the human dimension. The state that systematically disregards human rights obligations persecute lawyers, journalists, human rights defenders, is a security threat for the entire region. Third, only the strong civil society matters can resist launching an aggressive war. You cannot stop the aggressor with reports of litigations. Human rights are lost if left to diplomats, lawyers, or experts. Human rights education and awareness among the population should become a priority. And last, this is not the war of two states, Russia and Ukraine. This is the war of two systems, authoritarianism and democracy. If we do not stop Putin in Ukraine, he will go further. Ukraine needs all kinds of support from the civilized world because our world is very interconnected and only the spread of freedom makes our world safer. Thank you.
Vyasna from Belarus was founded in 1996 in response to the controversial constitutional amendments that gave the Belarus president dictatorial powers, triggering widespread demonstrations. Vyasna provided support for jailed demonstrators and their families. In the following years, Vyasna evolved into a broad-based human rights organization that documented and protested against the authorities' torturing of political prisoners. Government authorities in Belarus have repeatedly sought to silence the organization's founder, Ales Bialyatsky. He was first imprisoned from 2011 to 2014. In 2020, following large-scale demonstrations against the regime, he was again arrested. He remains in jail without trial. Despite tremendous personal hardship, Mr. Bialyatsky remains resolute in his fight for human rights and democracy in Belarus. We honor his struggle, and we are honored to have Vladimir Vyalichkin from Vyasna to talk about their common fight for freedom and democracy. Having endured a similar experience during the 1990s dictatorship of Slobodan Milosevic, we in the Belgrade Centre for Security Policy also stand with Mr. Bialyatsky, Vyasna, and our friends from the civil society of Belarus.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Quite recently, the Norwegian Nobel Committee decided to award the Peace Prize for the protection of human rights the Belarusian human rights activist Ales Bialyatsky, chairman of the Human Rights Center Vyasna. Ales Bialyatsky has promoted the right to criticize authority and protected the fundamental rights of citizens over the years. He has made outstanding efforts in documenting war crimes, human rights violations, and abuses of power. He has proven the importance of the civil society for peace and democracy in Belarus. A press release from the United Nations Human Rights Committee noted the attempts by the Belarusian authorities to make Bialyatsky be silent, and yet it does not retreat an inch in the fight for human rights and democracy in Belarus. It is really so. Nobel laureate Ales Bialyatsky was arrested last year following street protests against the regime. Not only Ales, but also 6 more members of Vyasna pay for democracy ideas with their freedom and health, as well as hundreds of thousands of repressed citizens for trying to overthrow the dictatorship and restore democratic order. Members of the Human Rights Center Vyasna continue to be held in the pretrial detention center on arbitrary charges. 2 vice chairmen of our organization, Valentin Stefanovich and Vladimir Lapkovich, coordinator of the Vyasna volunteer service, Marfa Rabkova, and the volunteer Andrei Chapyuk. They were sentenced to 15 and 6 years in prison. Human rights activists of Vyasna Brest branch, Sergei Petrukhin, was sentenced to 3 years of correctional colony. Member of the Human Rights Center Vesna Leonid Sudalenko was sentenced to 3 years. His colleague Tatiana Lasitsa was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison. On the 11th of August, the investigation committee reported that from August 2020, 11,000 criminal cases of an extremist orientation were opened in Belarus against civil activists. By the 1st of October, there were several thousand civil activists in places of detention. 1,324 of them are recognized now as political prisoners. Human rights activists continue to recognize numerous facts of ill treatment against citizens deprived of their liberty for political reasons, detained and subjected for administrative arrest for participating in peaceful assemblies. The inhuman conditions of detention for this category of detainees, deliberately created by the administration of various places of deprivation of liberty, are regarded as torture. The aggressive war unleashed by the Russian Federation in Ukraine has been going on for more than 8 months, in which the aggressor troops located on the territory of Belarus are involved, and the Belarusian infrastructure is used. The Human Rights Center Vesna strongly condemned the actions of the Belarusian and Russian authorities, which undermine the foundations of peaceful coexistence, violate the constitution and laws of Belarus, as well as the provisions of international treaties. The Nobel Peace Prize for Ales Beliatsky, the Russian Memorial, and the Ukrainian Center for Civil Liberties serves as a reminder to the governments around the world that the hallmark of successful and stable democracies is the existence of a strong and freely functioning civil society. Thank you.
The Human Rights Organization Memorial was established in 1987 by human rights activists in the former Soviet Union who wanted to ensure that the victims of the oppressive communist regime would never be forgotten. Memorial is based on the notion that confronting past crimes is essential for preventing new ones. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Memorial grew to become the largest human organization in Russia. Memorial's activity continued during the Chechen wars. Some of Memorial's employees were killed because of their work. For years, civil society actors in Russia are victims of threats, imprisonment, disappearance, and murder. In December 2021, Putin's regime ordered Memorial to cease and desist, but its people refused to give up. We are proud to have one of them with us, Anastasia Garina, Executive Director of the Human Rights Organization Memorial. Anastasia, we in the Belgrade Centre for Security Policy also stand with Russian civil society in their struggle for freedom and democracy.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Then I began to speak. I understand that people usually expect some answers for their questions, but I'm afraid we don't still have any, just statements. The first statement is that we came to the very dark page of our history. I mean, Russia itself and probably the whole world, because Russia tries to drag the whole world with it now. Probably it's obvious here on the conference, but still it's not obvious for the people in different countries inside of Russia and outside. And it's a problem, of course, because I believe that, and hopefully we are in the beginning of the process, so it will be worse. the second statement, that what happened didn't happen unexpectedly one day. Just it wasn't the morning when we woke up and find ourselves in non-democratic country. We have different periods of our history, and in the end of Soviet era, then our organization was founded. There appeared some freedoms, freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. And after the respect for human rights gradually formed in the country. But it didn't last for long. Step by step, every day. Sometimes it was a big step, sometimes it was a very small step, but it was in every field, and it was the way down and down and down and down. So now there is no freedom of speech in Russia, and you can just say the things that are obvious for the people all over the world, but in Russia you can be jailed for that. There is no freedom of assembly, and still, of course, people try to protest, but it never helps. Now it's too late to do that, probably. People are kidnapping, murdered, tortured, and I'm afraid that there is no any limits for it now. So that's why I'm talking that probably it will be worse. The first statement is that we were, the civil society and the activists, human rights defenders, we were unable to resist this process. So it was step by step, but we couldn't stop it. And first of all, I think now it's very difficult to say for many people, but probably, I think, it happened because we didn't pay enough attention to it. So of course, we see that processes inside the country are not okay, but probably we didn't really believe how serious are this process. How propaganda, then it appeared, it didn't appear suddenly. We have a free press many years ago. But then it became not really free, and the propaganda appeared. It appeared many years ago, and at first, then we heard of some weird statements from the TV set, from the news. We just think, okay, I personally think that, okay, it's really weird, but who will believe it? It's just no one. Because of course there are some people in every country, in every time, there are some people who believe in conspiracy theories, to UFO, to some fake information about whatever it is, but it's not a big percent of population. And there is always such a people, but no, it was not like that. It's not only for UFO believers. Now, in the very weird things, millions of people believe. So, of course, probably if we understood how it works before it came to this very point, probably we could do something. And the last statement is that this position that we don't pay enough attention, this position is not only Russian characteristic. I see people now all over the world, they say even human rights defenders they believe that something wrong is with Russian society, so it can't be in another country, in another society, that people all over the world were just let Putin and regime to do what they want, but they miss that it's not only to let him do. It's about million people, not only in Russia, still believe in propaganda, still believe that it's not just let him do for money. It's about believe him. It's about believe those statements. It's about believe that we don't need human rights, but we need a strong state that can. I don't know, but I don't know what is the reason to have a strong state, but many people still believe in it, and we need to remember that when we are talking about supporting the Russian regime, it's not only about supporting it for money. It's not only about the economical reasons. Many people still believe that it's okay, and this is the great problem, not only about Russia and Russian society. It's a great problem for the whole world. Thank you.